Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Steady English Stories. Close your eyes for a moment, my friend. Picture yourself standing in a crowded hall in New York City in the year 1853. Around you, thousands of people are talking, laughing, pointing at strange new machines. This is the Crystal Palace, a giant glass building built to show the world's newest inventions. You smell hot metal and fresh paint. You hear the low hum of steam engines. And then, high above the crowd, you see a man standing on a wooden platform. The platform hangs from a single rope. There are no walls around him, no safety net below him, just open air all the way down. The man raises an axe and he cuts the rope. What do you think happens next? Does he fall, or does something save him? This is the true story of Elisha Otis, a man almost nobody remembers by name, even though his invention is one you use almost every single day. Elisha Otis built the safety brake, and without it, the modern city, with its tall towers, tall buildings, and elevators, simply could not exist. Before we continue, my friend, if stories like this one help you learn English in a calm, steady way, please subscribe to this channel. Every new subscriber helps this small channel grow, and it costs you nothing. Now, let's go back to where this story really begins. Elisha Otis was born in the year 1811 on a small farm in the state of Vermont, in the northern part of the United States. His family expected him to become a farmer, like his father before him. A farmer is someone who grows crops and raises animals for a living. But young Elisha did not love the farm. What he loved was the blacksmith's forge nearby, a place where metal is heated and shaped into tools. He would spend hours there, watching iron bend and change shape under fire and hammer. Even as a boy, Elisha Otis wanted to build things. He wanted to fix things. He wanted to understand how machines worked. As a young man, he left the farm to find work. But his path was not smooth. Not smooth means full of problems and difficulty. Otis tried several businesses over the years: a gristmill, a wagon factory, a workshop of his own, and one after another. They failed. He was also often sick. In fact, for much of his life, Otis suffered from poor health, and this made steady, secure work even harder to find. What do you think it feels like, my friend, to try again and again, and to keep failing? Many of us know this feeling. Elisha Otis knew it very well. He was already in his 40s, no longer a young man, and he still had no fortune, no fame, and no stable job to call his own. But Otis had one quiet gift that never left him. He never stopped tinkering. Tinkering means fixing and adjusting small mechanical things, just to see if you can make them work better. Wherever he went, whatever job he took, Otis could not help but notice broken machines and imagine how to repair them. In 1852, at the age of 41, Otis took a job at a bedframe factory in Yonkers, New York, a town just north of New York City. His task there seemed simple enough: help move heavy machinery and materials between the different floors of the factory. The factory used a hoist, a simple lifting platform, pulled up and down by a rope. Hoists like this were common in factories of that time, but they had a serious, well-known danger. If the rope frayed means the rope's threads began to wear thin and break apart, or if the rope simply snapped, the platform would crash to the ground below. Workers were injured this way. Some were killed. Otis looked at this danger every single day, and slowly an idea began to form in his mind. What if the platform did not need the rope at all? Not completely. What if there was a second system, a hidden one, that only activated the moment the rope failed? Otis began experimenting. He built a simple mechanism, a strong, curved piece of steel, shaped something like a wagon spring, that pressed outward against a ratchet. A ratchet is a toothed bar, a piece of metal with small notches cut into its edge, like the teeth of a saw. As long as the rope held the platform's weight, the steel spring stayed pulled back, doing nothing. But the instant the rope's tension disappeared, the instant it snapped, the spring would snap outward and lock into the ratchet's teeth, gripping the guide rail and stopping the platform from falling. It was a small, almost humble piece of engineering. No steam, no electricity, no complicated parts, just steel meeting steel at exactly the right moment. Otis called it the safety hoist. He installed it. He tested it. It worked. But here is the question, my friend. Would anyone else believe it worked? Would anyone trust their life to a stranger's invention and step onto a platform hanging above empty air? Elisha Otis was about to find out, and the way he chose to prove it, in front of a crowd of thousands, with an axe in his hand, would change the shape of cities forever. So there stood Elisha Otis, high above the crowd at the Crystal Palace, in the year 1853. With an axe in his hand, he had a problem, my friend. A safety brake is a strange thing to sell. Nobody wakes up worried about a danger they have never thought about. Otis had tried selling his safety hoist quietly through normal business channels, but orders were slow, very slow. People did not understand why they needed it. So Otis decided on something bold. If words could not convince people, then maybe a shock could. He arranged to demonstrate his invention publicly at the Great Exhibition Hall in New York City, in front of thousands of visitors. He built a tall, open shaft. A shaft is simply a vertical passage, open on the sides, so the crowd could see everything. He stood on the platform. The platform rose, slowly, higher and higher above the crowd, held only by a single rope, and then, in front of everyone watching, Otis raised his axe and cut the rope himself. For one terrible second, the platform dropped. The crowd gasped. Some screamed, and then it stopped, just a few inches down, and no more. The steel spring had done exactly what Otis designed it to do. It had locked into the ratchet the instant the rope's weight disappeared, gripping the guide rail and holding the platform steady in the open air. Otis looked down at the stunned crowd below him, and in simple words, he is remembered as saying something like this: "All safe, gentlemen, all safe." What do you think that moment felt like, my friend, standing safely in the air after cutting your own rope in front of thousands of strangers? That single moment changed everything. Word spread quickly through the city. A man had trusted his own life to his own machine in public and survived. Orders for the safety hoist began to arrive. Slowly, factory owners, warehouse managers, and builders started to see what Otis had already understood for years, that a machine which could lift heavy loads safely, floor after floor, was not just convenient. It was necessary. Otis founded his own small company to build and sell his safety elevators. It was a modest beginning, a handful of workers, simple tools, and orders that came in one at a time rather than in great numbers. But the idea itself was growing far beyond what one small workshop could contain. Here is something worth pausing on, my friend. Until this point in history, buildings could only rise so high. Do you know why? Because people could not and would not climb 10, 12, 20 flights of stairs every single day. A tall building was not practical. It did not matter how strong steel and stone had become. Human legs set the real limit on how tall a city could grow. Otis's safety elevator quietly removed that limit in 1857. 4 years after that dramatic demonstration, Otis installed his first passenger safety elevator, an elevator built to carry people, not just factory goods, inside a department store in New York City. At a shop called E.V. Howout & Co., for the first time, ordinary people could step into a small moving room and be lifted safely, floor by floor, without fear. This was the turning point, my friend. Once people trusted the elevator, architects and builders began to imagine buildings taller than anyone had dared to build before. A building of 4 or 5 floors could now become a building of 10 floors, then 20, then far more. But here is where the story grows complicated. Elisha Otis himself did not live to see the great towers his invention would one day make possible. He was often unwell throughout his life, and in 1861, just 4 years after his first passenger elevator was installed, he became sick with diphtheria, a serious infection of the throat, and he died. He was only 49 years old. Otis died a modest man, still building his small company, still not knowing that the invention he had shown off with an axe and a rope would one day carry millions of people, every single day, inside the tallest towers on earth. What do you think, my friend? Is it possible to change the world completely and never live to see how far that change will travel? Elisha Otis never saw a skyscraper. He never rode an elevator inside a 100-story tower. He died believing his invention was, at best, a useful and clever safety device for factories and shops. He had no way of knowing that his 2 sons, Charles and Norton, were about to take his small workshop and turn it into something enormous. And he had no way of knowing that the great cities of the future cities, reaching higher into the sky than anyone in 1853 could have imagined, were now quietly waiting to be built. After Elisha Otis died in 1861, his sons Charles and Norton did not let their father's small workshop disappear. They took his safety elevator and turned it into a real company, one that grew steadily year after year. As more and more builders began to trust what Otis had proven with his own life on that rope years before, and slowly the skyline of the world began to change. In the following decades, cities like New York and Chicago started reaching upward in a way no one had seen before. 10 floors became 20. 20 became 50. Architects designed towers of steel and glass that would have been completely impossible without a safe, reliable way to lift people to the top and bring them back down again. The elevator Otis had built to save a few factory workers in Yonkers was now quietly holding up entire skylines. Think about that for a moment, my friend. The Eiffel Tower in Paris, the Empire State Building in New York, later, towers taller than anyone in 1853 could have dreamed of. Every one of them depends on a machine descended directly from that simple steel spring and ratchet Otis first built to solve one small, practical problem. And here is something worth remembering. Otis did not set out to change the shape of cities. He was not trying to build the tallest tower in the world. He was simply a man who kept losing at business, kept falling sick, kept starting over, and who happened to notice a real, everyday danger and refused to look away from it. He solved the problem in front of him as honestly and as simply as he could. What do you think, my friend? How many great changes in history began this way? Not with a grand plan to change the world, but with one person quietly fixing the one problem right in front of them. This is the first lesson from Otis's story. You do not need a big, dramatic goal to create something important. Sometimes the most powerful work in the world begins small. A workshop, a spring, a length of rope, and a problem that most people had simply learned to live with. There is a second lesson here too, my friend, and it is just as important. Otis never lived to see the true size of what he built. He died at 49, still a modest businessman, still uncertain if his small company would even survive. He never rode an elevator to the top of a 100-story building, and yet his work outlived him by more than a century, and it continues, quietly, every single day, all around the world. We do not always get to see the full result of our own effort. Sometimes the value of what we build is only clear long after we are gone. This does not make the work any less important. It only means that good, honest work is worth doing, even when we cannot yet see how far it will travel. And this brings us, my friend, to you and to your own English learning journey. Learning a language is very much like building Otis's safety brake. You do not see the great result all at once. You practice quietly, day after day. You listen to one story, then another. You do not always feel yourself growing. The change is slow, almost invisible, like a spring being built one small piece at a time. But if you keep showing up, if you keep listening and practicing steadily, one day you will realize that you have built something strong, something that holds, just like that small steel spring quietly protecting every elevator ride in every tall building in the world. So keep going, my friend. Keep listening. Keep learning, one steady story at a time. If this story moved you today, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you have not already. It truly helps this small channel grow, and it costs you nothing. I would also love to know, which story would you like to hear next? Leave a comment below and tell me. Until next time, my friends, keep learning.